TCS viewers, Chris Nichols here again from the camera store. We've got ourselves a beautiful, clear December morning. We've got the park all to ourselves, so come with me. We're going to take a stroll through the park today with the brand new A7 Mark II. I know you're thinking, man, another Sony camera, yes, but hopefully a very good one. Come with me, we're going to find out. All right, guys, so almost exactly a year ago, we did our Christmas special, and we've got another one coming up, by the way. And in that, we actually voted the A7, A7R our camera of the year, and it was largely because of such a unique innovation, full-frame sensor in a tiny mirrorless camera. Now we've got this new A7 Mark II, and you know, a lot of the things we're going to do today are going to be based on what have they changed, what's different about this camera. And I think one of the biggest things for me is the handling, some good and some bad, and I'm going to take you through it. First thing though, just because I'm holding the camera here with my gloves, it's a brand new grip, and it does feel very, very nice. It is a larger grip, it's very comfortable, very sturdy. I didn't complain about the old grip, but I feel that this is a good step in the right direction. One thing though I will notice too, the camera is substantially heavier, and I don't know, I don't like that. I find this camera, if I'm doing it one-handed, it's actually quite uncomfortable to hold. Just the weight, the balance, being able to change control dials, things like that. Otherwise though, very, very familiar interface. The mode dial's in a good position. I mean, it works well. They haven't really changed that. Exposure comp, same thing. Great, no need to fix it. One thing, though, that I really hated about the original A7 and A7R was the shutter button. It was placed really high up, and I found it very uncomfortable to reach back and get it. So finally, with the larger grip, they've incorporated it into the front of the grip, and that's great. It's perfect. That's probably one of the smartest things they could do. Getting this new camera, because of that, that's worth the price of admission alone. But I do have a complaint. We've got two dials, thumb dial and finger dial, and of course the A7 had that as well. But I actually prefer the A7's dials. They were big, they were metal, they were easy to change. The front dial here is not bad, but the back dial, it's recessed, and I actually find it quite hard to turn effectively. You know, gloves on too, that just exacerbates the issues. So I actually kind of wish we had those big chunky dials back. All right, so I'm going to start taking some shots here, and of course Jordan's messed up all my settings, but looking at the back of the camera, it's as familiar as always. There's my favorite thing on Sony cameras, the function button there, all customizable, and I can easily change things like my ISO, my focusing capabilities, picture profiles. It's nice, it's familiar, it's worked always in the past, and they still have it. Yeah, again, I know I've said it before, guys, but this back dial, it is hard to change, and I know I'm wearing gloves, but even still. Now, when you're talking about a Mark II camera, that means that you're looking for changes and innovations from the original body. And that's why it's a little bit disappointing that the A7 Mark II is essentially using the exact same setup. We've got the 24 megapixel full frame sensor you'd find in the A7. And you know, they haven't decided to do anything different, like take out the aliasing filter like they did on the RX1R. So we're getting the same image quality. Again, it's not a bad thing. The A7 already took beautiful photos, and I'm seeing here that I'm getting essentially the same image quality. But yeah, I was expecting a little bit more change there. Just a few more points I want to talk about, just to the overall camera feel and handling. Some good and some bad. Now, first off, this extra weight that I'm talking about on the camera, it comes from the fact that we've now got a full metal body. It's magnesium on the top and bottom, and it does have a very chunky, very sort of modern, minimalistic aesthetic. One thing I don't like, these side doors, especially with gloves on. To get in here and do this, you know, the A7 and A7R had these really nice hinged metal doors. They've now gone to plastic with these flexible tabs, which always break and always fall apart. And you try to push these back in and they just don't stick. So that's kind of a minus. On the plus side again, brand new custom buttons, C1 and C2 on top. Very handy, very good position. I like that. That's a nice change. Ooh, I like the easy exposure comp. Again, it's just handy to have it there. Look on the screen, very accurate. You know, the back screen rotates, of course, which is a nice feature with Sony's. We're really enjoying that. good resolution. Nothing's really changed there. I mean, the screens, the viewfinder, although aesthetically a little bit different, are basically the same specs as the old camera. All right, so we found a nice quiet spot here, and it reminds me of something that I really dealt with on the A7 and A7R, the original ones. They had probably the loudest, most obnoxious shutter I've ever heard. And not only were they loud, but they also had a lot of slap. It was almost like using an old school Pentax 6.7. They really kicked the camera, and you'd even get a lot of blur shots at slow shutter speeds. But here on the A7 Mark II, I'm happy to say that the shutter is definitely well dampened. It's definitely more stable. We don't get that hard slap. Is it quieter? Well, I'll let you guys listen for yourselves here. Just listen to this here. I'd say so. It still does make a fair amount of noise, but it's definitely an improvement and a very welcome improvement. So the camera actually had a really hard time focusing there on the snow, just with the shadow of the tree. That being said, the overall focus here, guys, I'm going to say it's definitely better than the A7, A7R. It's still not anywhere close, though, to what we're used to now with mirrorless cameras. You know, we heard a lot of talk about the A6000 system being incorporated in here, but this is definitely not quick like an A6000. You know, I'm just checking out the back screen, zooming around here, navigating. And actually, another thing that I noticed that is a nice improvement, I never liked this back dial. We talked about that. It was really hard to turn, but I think they've raised the edges. They've made it a little bit more calibrated properly, and it works really, really nice now. So easy to navigate as a joystick and easy to turn, which is handy when I'm zooming like this. So I know so far it doesn't sound like I'm totally blown away by the A7 Mark II's changes, but there are a couple reasons why you do want to consider buying this camera. First one we've talked about, the new placement of the shutter button. But here's another great change on this camera, a new 5-axis stabilizer system. And you're going to need it because, again, this shutter is still big, heavy, and clunky, and this camera is just stabilizing in all directions. Up, down, left, right, pitch, yaw, roll. Doesn't matter, it does it. I've been shooting 100 ISO all day today, even in some poor lighting conditions, and I'm very confident the camera's giving me sharp, sharp pictures. Now, it's interesting. This 5-axis stabilizer, how does it work with lenses that already have stabilization? Well, then what the Sony's going to do is it's going to go back to doing a 3-axis stabilizer on the sensor and then utilizing the lens's built-in stabilization for even better effect. But overall, this is a great system, and it doesn't end there. You see, Sony have recognized that the A7 platform is very popular among videographers and photographers using lenses other than Sony NEX. We're talking Sony Alpha mount with adapters. We're talking Leica M glass and R glass. We're talking Canon L glass. So you got to give Sony credit for then incorporating a stabilization system that can work with all of these options as well. And it's pretty easy. I mean, if you're using Sony Alpha with the respective adapters or Canon L with the metabones, you'll automatically get the stabilization without having to make any other changes. If you want to use lenses that aren't supported that way, well, then you simply go into the menu, set in the focal length, and you get that correction as well. It can be a pain in the ass with zoom lenses, but still, it's so much better than not having it at all. A really nice move on their part. So precariously positioned here, again without a camera strap as usual, but I really want to test out this steady shot. So I'm shooting here ISO 400, f8, and I'm going to try to get this shot. You know, I'm sticking my arms out here, 25th of a second. Let's see what we get. Feels stable. And again, we're getting a nice, stable-looking shot here. No camera movement, so very, very impressive. All right, so we're just going to take a shot here, bracing against the tree, ISO 100, f8 on the incredibly good FE 55mm. We got a lot of fine detail here, so I'm just going to take a shot. And, you know, even just from zooming in here and judging it here really quickly, I'd say it looks exactly like what I expect from a 24-megapixel sensor with an aliasing filter. You're not going to be disappointed. All right, so I'm going to take a shot here, you know, just in the shade, 3200 ISO. We're not going to do our usual ramp up because we already know exactly what to expect out of this sensor. But, you know, just to allay any concerns, let's take a shot and have a look here. And again, really, we get in there, we zoom in on the noise. It's very good, very typical of a full-frame sensor at 3200 ISO. This is all to be expected. And again, don't let me get you down. It's good. This sensor is very, very good. It's just not blowing us away from the previous A7.
Hey guys, it's Jordan, so you know what that means. It's time to talk about video on the A7 Mark II. And let's just get the important thing out of the way first. The steady shot in this works in video just like it does in stills. I did a test here in a vibrating car, shot it without and with the steady shot on, and you can see it's a huge difference. And some of these shots here are the water, they're handheld as well. And that's on a 55mm lens, and it is very well stabilized. So this is going to be great if you're doing walk and talks, documentary work. It really eliminates the need to get a full series of stabilized Sony lenses. And it's wonderful if you're adapting, especially for Nikon shooters who don't have access to stabilization. Works very, very well. I wouldn't say it's quite as effective as the EM1, but it's still one of the best in-body stabilization systems I've seen. Sony's also given us some other goodies. We've now got XAVC compression, a big step up from the AVC HD in the previous one. Brings me to the other nice thing, we have S-Log in this. So you get a very flat profile with it, makes it a whole lot easier to grade. Gives you more options in post essentially, and a bit more dynamic range as well. Now I do find with the A7 sensor we do tend to get some moire, bit of aliasing, and the S-Log, it doesn't completely eliminate that, but it really helps with it. So you'll get better video quality if you properly grade the S-Log 2 files on this. All in all, I'd say it's a pretty compelling reason to upgrade if you're a videographer.
All right, so now time for a little interesting spin on the video here. We've brought in Kyle Marquardt, professional photographer, very talented man, but also a very faithful Canon SLR user. Now he's going to come in here because he's not a big fan of mirrorless cameras, are you, Kyle?
I haven't had a lot of experiences that are that fantastic with them. They're usually too slow. The quality, the color, the dynamic range has never been good enough, so I've never bothered.
Well, here's the thing now. I mean, cameras have come a long way in the mirrorless market. You're going to get better dynamic range, higher megapixel counts, okay? Yeah. And I hopefully, well, you'll be pleased with the capabilities of the cameras, how it handles. So Kyle's going to take it for a test, and if he ends up liking this camera, it's a go. So, sound good to you?
Oh, yeah. So the first thing that I'm noticing when I'm playing with this is the way it feels in my hands. That's a big deal. After working in Antarctica for about 5 years, the biggest motto that I had is in the camera, if you can't touch the button with your gloves, if you can't dial it or use it very well, then the button doesn't exist. You can't use it. Whereas here, for manual exposure, for shutter and aperture, it's really, really easy to dial it in. So I like the way the dial actually feels. How do I take good photos in this light? I don't even know. I'm gonna find out. That! I'm accidentally taking dozens of photos. I'm used to shooting f/16 with the sun in there. You got this beautiful trailing lines coming from the sun. I'm seeing if we can get the same thing with this camera and lens. Oh yeah. That's garbage. So what's really cool is that even though I'm looking through the viewfinder, I'm getting a look at the actual image from the sensor. So there's a live view of what kind of image I'm actually getting. Cool. I'm getting away with really slow shutter speeds. Stabilization is nice. I still don't know what they mean 5-axis stabilization though.
Up, down, left, right, pitch, yaw, roll.
Even in the viewfinder, even though we have a very plain profile in here, it looks good. It's hard to wrap my head around the idea that something so dinky like this has a good image quality. But I can just see that while using it. I wanted to hate this camera for some reason. And I don't. So I'm keeping the camera warm right now because I'm not so sure that the cold weather performance is all that good. We just put in a fresh battery about an hour ago and it's already saying that it's dead. We're going to do a test here for the steady shot. We're going to take the same photograph multiple times with the steady shot on and off at different shutter speed levels. So we're going to be able to see how well this thing handles for handheld shots. This stabilizer, it did help a fair bit. I was having trouble shooting at 1/30th of a second without the stabilizer on, but I was getting much more consistent shots at 1/15th of a second with the stabilizer on, and that's pretty good. And that's especially pretty good when I'm using a camera that I've never used before. So yeah, about twice as effective as it is without the stabilizer in it. So I really do like the way this camera feels. I started fantasizing about being able to use this in a lot of professional situations. The battery life wasn't that good. We lost a lot of battery life in a very short period of time, so I wouldn't bring it to Antarctica. The manual focus settings, where it shows you what you're focusing on with a really nice overlay, is a really cool feature. So using this without other lenses, even Canon lenses, is really luxurious, really nice. The image quality is fantastic. If you're a landscape photographer, or the kind of person that always wants a camera with you, this is fantastic, and it's blowing other flagship cameras out of the water. This is a step in the right direction for mirrorless cameras.
Okay, so we both have had a chance to handle the A7 Mark II, and big changes to the handling. I'll let you go first. What do you think?
And I love the new grip. I like the new weight. I like the feel of the camera.
Well, what I love is when you're wrong about something, and you are wrong about the grip. I mean, it does feel good, but it's still too small, and with the added weight on the camera, I actually found the camera quite uncomfortable to hold one-handed. You really need both hands on there to support it. See, yeah, build quality is great, but heavier weight does not necessarily mean more professional.
Okay, maybe not, but when I'm adapting this, which is also, I think, why they put the stabilizer in the body, they recognize that these are used with adapted lenses.
I agree.
A lot of those are going to be heavier than the Zeiss lenses, and this balances brilliantly on it. I found it very comfortable. I don't find the grip too small at all. I think it fits.
Okay, I retract my previous statement. I do not agree. I disagree, because the problem is the extra weight is just too far left and forward. Okay, so obviously we're not going to agree on that. But let's talk about what's really important. It's a Mark II. It's about the changes. Yep. What did you think about the video changes, the stabilizer, that kind of stuff?
Because of the XAVC, you're getting better quality for everybody in any use right now, straight out of the camera. It's kind of weird. You have to use a 64 gig card or bigger to get access to that higher quality, so you need to know that going into it. But they've also added the S-Log. I love working with S-Log.
Sure.
But people need to be aware. I mean, it takes a lot of time to do it, and quite a bit of practice as well to get natural skin tones with it. It's a great feature for pros, but honestly, I think most of those are going to be using the A7S anyway.
Yeah, but again, keep in mind, you don't have to use S-Log. You got just standard picture profiles
here too.
It's a great feature to have. Now, I think the stabilizer is probably the biggest one. It was great hand-holding this camera. The stabilizer helps out a lot. That's the feature that's going to make A7S users, a little jealous.
And I can't blame them at all.
Yeah.
I am a little surprised that they went with the A7 to replace instead of the A7R, because the R is the one that people, I think, would be adapting lenses to more commonly.
Yeah, see, I don't know if I agree with that, just because, first off, from a marketing aspect, you want the lower-end camera coming out first to do the sales. You don't want the big pro camera coming out and then everybody ignoring this camera.
Right.
And, frankly, Jordan, the A7R, whatever its replacement is going to be, it's going to be high megapixels, no aliasing filter. Those cameras, to get the best results, need to be on tripods anyways.
See, everybody with a D810, I don't see walking around always with a tripod. It is nice to have the extra resolution.
Ask those D810 users if they get good handheld shots with all that detail and then find that their shots have motion blur. I mean, even with the stabilizer, I think it's better for Sony to put it out here to test it, to get it out.
Okay, well, we don't agree on that. No. But I will say, it's a big upgrade over the original A7, and it's not a huge price bump, which I was expecting.
I think we can agree that, if you're looking at the A7 system and you want something that's affordable and capable all around, I think this is the best choice right now, hey?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's an awesome value for the dollar.
Wow, we agree. All right, well, on something, check us out on Twitter, subscribe to our channel. We will be happy to see you guys very soon.
Yeah, see you again.